I am strong. I am like the person everybody can rely on and go to. And I think in a way, or I know in a way, that made me sicker instead of reaching out and being like, hey, like this is me right now. Like I am not doing well. So we stop ourselves because we're like, well, maybe I'm not ready, or maybe I don't have the support, or maybe I'm not capable of this, or that self-doubt creeps in. And so we pull ourselves back.
Ladies and gentlemen, for today's episode, we have a very special guest. She is a mindset coach who helps people get rid of their limiting beliefs. She has immersed herself in neuroscience, psychology, and consciousness.
Nicole has an extremely empowering mindset. She also has done cognitive behavioral therapy. She's got a bachelor's in entrepreneurship, and she's studied cognitive neuroscience. This episode will help you shift your thinking, which will bring you far more results in health, wealth, and love.
If you are struggling with your self-belief, this episode is for you. Enjoy it. It is with the one and only Nicole Raymondi.
Talk to you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University. We have a very, very special guest today. She is a mindset coach, certified in NLP, and the founder of Self by Design, the one and only Nicole Raymondi. How are you doing today, Nicole?
Great. How are you guys doing? Happy to be here.
We're happy
Really
to
excited.
have you. Some would say living the dream is what we like to say that we're feeling in the studio.
This is the dream. I can see it. You guys are living your best life.
We're trying. We're trying.
By design.
We put it out in the universe. There was people working on the roof, and they have left, so we should have a nice, quiet studio here. So
Perfect.
we love to talk about where you are currently, and then we'll dive into your past, and then we'll get specific with questions. So what does Nicole do on her day-to-day? Talk about who Nicole is today.
Wow. Yeah. Day to day. I mean, talk about Self by Design. I definitely design my lifestyle, so every day is different. I always have some sort of coaching or communication with individuals. That just is my main model for obviously the mindset work, supporting people in that direction. And then also for myself, I have a lot of kind of revelations working with people in that capacity. So I think that's one of my staples day to day as far as the job goes, the career path. And then, it's just a lot of serving and showing up how I can with content creation. I do a lot of the videos now. So I've committed to a weekly video, not as much as you guys. I know you guys do like a podcast, every 4 or 5 days. So that's a whole new level. And I do a lot of writing, workshops, and just kind of keep it playful, keep it fun, but make sure that I'm always serving and always doing what I can for my clients, and always learning. That's really big for me too.
So that's a string I would love to pull. You mentioned that what you do a lot is serve. Yes. You want to be of service, and you help entrepreneurs. What do you do? And I'm sure this is something you've seen. What do you do with entrepreneurs who are so focused on service that they either do not know how to ask what they're worth, or they're afraid to charge for their services? They're way more focused on the service than they are the sustainability of their business. What advice do you give to them?
Yeah, it's always a balancing act. Like that's kind of one of the first determinants is usually people are too heavy on the self or the service, right? So it's kind of figuring out which side they're hanging out on and then bringing them back into balance. So if they're really heavy on the service, that is where you get your stress, your burnout, right? And just people that are overextending themselves. So you have to come back to the self piece and really stabilizing that, grounding yourself. And I will usually, as simple as it sounds, start with a routine. And I have a 3-step routine that I always teach my clients. I implement myself, and it starts with movement in the morning, meditation, and mindset. So whether you have 5 minutes or for each, like 5, 5, 5, 10, 10, 10, 20, 20, 20, I usually even try to do 30, 30, 30, just stabilizing yourself and giving yourself that peace in the morning to move your body, move those emotions, even tap into kind of like what's coming up as you're moving, and then do that meditation piece. Really just be present with yourself, be present with, again, what's coming up, and set those intentions for the day. And then mindset can be anything from journaling to listening to a podcast like Next Level University, or just anything that really gets you kind of in that learning state and primes you for the day. So I would move them back into that territory pretty quickly.
Nicole, so what I've found through coaching and speaking and interviewing people is that one of the main things that determines someone's, you talk about direction a lot in your videos. You always are saying the word direction.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk a lot about alignment as well, which I think direction and alignment have a lot to do with one another. And what I've noticed is that someone's paradigms, there's two paradigms in particular that I look for whenever I'm coaching someone. How do they view themselves?
Yes.
And how do they view the world?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the filter of how they decide to show up in the world and where they fit in it. When you talk about whether it's neuro-linguistic programming or limiting beliefs or mindset shifts or direction, what do you believe is the most fundamentally misunderstood paradigm when it comes to one's own highest self and alignment and growth?
Ooh, powerful question. Well, first of all, I want to say I think a lot of the way that people view themselves is also how they view the world. Like it's usually one and the same because you're kind of, like you said, like looking through that same filter and seeing the world. Just through the same eyes that you're seeing yourself. It's that kind of oneness versus that separation. And then to speak to the other side of the question, kind of, so you're asking like what is it usually that people that's kind of holding them back from moving into that direction and that alignment?
What do they misunderstand? What's the most common misunderstood paradigm of self? Based on all the stuff you've studied and learned and clients, like what do you think is so misunderstood out there in the world?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, what I hear and see a lot of either on podcasts or videos or whatever it is, it's kind of like we're carrying around all this garbage and all this crap, right? That we just want to like eliminate and just get rid of and just like, that's not us anymore, right? And I think in some ways it's a positive message if presented in the right way. But in other ways, I think a lot of people, especially my clients or workshops or whatever, show up just being like, I have all this shit, like help me get rid of it. Like help me just become a whole new version of myself and eliminate all that crap. But I think it's more about integration. So really seeing what those patterns and those programs are that are just outdated, maybe not garbage or crap, like they really were serving you at a point in your life and they were designed for a reason. They were designed to help you survive or help you do better in that career, that relationship, but they were just no longer working for the direction that you're heading or the person that you're becoming. So I think it's kind of destigmatizing or like eliminating the negative focus on all that baggage and all those programs so you can show compassion for, okay, that worked for a while. I'm grateful for this and kind of integrate it. And then it just seems to dissolve and slip away. And that's the biggest shift that I've made with my clients as well, is just kind of like once you're in that space of like, oh, wow, I see, like I do that. I'm aware of that now, but I see why I do that and it makes sense. And now I can just kind of, like show compassion and empathy, even love for it and let it just come back into that integration. And then you can move forward with that alignment in that direction so much smoother and with so much more confidence and clarity than if you're trying to just like eliminate all this stuff and break free. So
I really, really enjoy what you just said. And I think for our listeners, I want to bring something to light. I think, I talk often about the very first iPhone in 2007 versus the iPhone now and how much it's been updated and innovated and it's so much better. Even though in 2007 the iPhone was a revolutionary breakthrough that in so many ways changed the world, it's literally 1,000 times better now, but not because they scrapped the first one.
Right.
It's because they built upon it. They innovated on the software. They updated the software. They updated the hardware. And that's kind of what you're saying is you don't have to eliminate every part of who you were.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to update and build upon that. And I think that's so, so powerful because I do agree with you. It's like this industry in particular, it's like, okay, just completely and utterly get rid of who you used to be and become a new person. When in reality, it's like, okay, transform who you were and who you are now into who you want to be. I think that's a very subtle but powerful mindset shift. So thank you.
Yeah, because there's always pieces that are working for you, right? And a lot of people will show up with limiting beliefs or things that they're ready to just get rid of. And it's like, well, hey, wait a second. I think that's working for you in a way, but how does it feel? Is is it, again, like aligned with where you're going? Like it's obviously got you to this point, but a lot of times what got you to where you want to be, even if you have a successful like $5 million a year business, it's not going to take you to the next level. So that's kind of just bringing that awareness to that piece. So
can you give us an example where you helped someone get to the next level by transforming an old paradigm? Sorry.
No, I was going to ask the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like what would be the best one that your audience can really resonate with. I would say like, so a lot of people have kind of that mindset, like it's never enough, right? Like that they reach a certain level and then they were like, okay, well that's, I've gotten here. Great. Like they take maybe a second to breathe in and then next level. And I think that a lot of people think that that's bad, right? Like we've heard that like the never enough, you have to get rid of that and just be grateful and the whole piece. But that has worked for people in a lot of ways, right? Like that's gotten to them to where they are, like just being like, I'm never satisfied, next level. And yeah, it's been a system and a pattern and even a program, like you're saying, that works, but maybe it doesn't work for this next level, or maybe it doesn't feel good, or maybe your priorities have shifted and your values and your lifestyle. And so it's not aligning anymore with you showing up for your family or showing up for your friends in the way that you want to show up. So I think that's probably the most common one that I see where I'm like, hey, wait a second, this has worked, but maybe it's just not where you're going anymore. Or there could be a better program in place. Just like you said, the iPhone 7, people still have those. Do they? Probably not. iPhone 8, no. They still work, but is it working the best way that it could? Like, you can still call people, you can still get around and make plans, but is it going to, make your breakfast? Just kidding. I don't think the new iPhone does that for you, but
Not yet.
They're headed there.
Nicole, in your opinion, what is the difference in the mindset of a high peak performer and somebody who maybe they're early in the journey, or maybe they have a ton of limiting beliefs? Like, what is the difference between the two? Because the more I learn and the more I evolve and I grow, I had so many limiting beliefs. Not enough, it's not smart enough, too short, too this, not enough. And as Alan and I really transition and continue to be consistent and peak performers, I'm realizing like a lot of those, the anxiety part of me actually did serve me for a long time because it made me super prepared.
Yeah.
But it also burned me to the ground. And that's something I kind of want to shift from. But what are some of the attributes that you've seen from high performers?
High performers, honestly, it's really how they see themselves. I mean, it's pretty simple and basic, but a lot of times if you work with somebody more at the beginning of their path and their journey, they're seeing themselves either in a past version of themselves or currently, and they've created those filters and it's literally the only lens that they're looking through. And a high performer is able to see themselves in a better lens and then also kind of create a vision that they're moving towards, that they're aligning towards, but then they come from that vision versus like leading and behaving towards it. I don't know if that makes sense, but they're like let's say they've created a vision that, okay, now I want to have my business be 10 million in revenue and serve at an even higher capacity, whatever it is. Now they're able to kind of come from that place. What does that person do? What routines do they have? What thoughts do they have? What beliefs do they have? Instead of, okay, here I am. And now I'm like starting at point A from the GPS and I'm going to get to point B. So it's just that shift. And I noticed that making that shift with people that are earlier in the journey changes everything for them.
How do you know what's possible? So Alan and I believe we know what's possible for us. As a coach, sometimes it's hard to understand what's possible for somebody else because you have to figure out like, okay, our journey went this way. How do you as a coach and a leader and a mentor help somebody understand what's possible for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, maybe this is like my strength and my weakness, but I think just about anything is possible for anybody. It just matters how much time and energy, that's going to take. Right. And so some people will want to launch their business or whatever it is within the next 6 months to a year. And it's like, okay, that's possible. I'm not going to say that it's not, but maybe we need to give you a little more time and space to manifest that. Maybe it's going to be 2 years. Maybe it's going to be 3 years. So yeah, just kind of, and holding that belief, because I think as a coach, you guys probably know this, but if you don't full-heartedly believe in that person and that vision that they're crafting, then that energy is going to transfer, right? So even if I have a point where I'm like, ooh, that's going to be tough, but like I want to come back to like check myself first and kind of move internally and realign with myself and my direction and know that this person is capable of that. I'm not even sure what they're capable of, because obviously I am, not them, but I need to believe and trust that they are capable, and humans are capable of extraordinary, unbelievable things, right? Like if you think about the things that we've accomplished just in humanity, it's unreal. So I always kind of come back and realign with that and know that they're capable of achieving whatever it is they want. So
I think one layer deeper that I've found too is they're better off trying than not trying. And that's a fundamental belief that I have, even if they are quote unquote delusional to some extent. It's better to try and find that out, because you're going to learn more about yourself. And I think that that's what I've had to come back to, because statistically speaking, not everyone is the same level of skill sets, but everyone can over the long term maximize their own unique potential. And definitely. I think that that's what I try to go back to regarding NLP. Okay. I don't think a lot of people actually know what that is. And I'm not making that wrong. I certainly didn't for a long time. I used to be an electrical and computer engineer, and I used to program computers. I didn't like it, but I did a bunch of different C++, Java, all that stuff. And what I don't think a lot of people understand is that we are all born with a hard drive that has no programs, really. Not no programs, but it has moldable software on it. Neuro-Linguistic Programming is a way to reprogram your subconscious, to instill new beliefs, new paradigms, new principles, new philosophies. Can you give me an example? Thank you. Can you give me an example of how you've reprogrammed yourself? Can you give me an example of an old program or an old paradigm that maybe served you for a time, but then limited you? And then a paradigm that you had to update specifically. Yeah. How did you do that? I know it's 3-part question.
The classic Alan 5-part question.
Let's untangle that. Not a quick no. I mean, again, it's so funny because when you start coaching, just like I said in the beginning, you see things that either you've worked through and you can hold space for somebody, or something that's coming up at that time. So it's like that mirror and that reflection. But something that was a big one for me and is a big one for the people that I work with is just that I have to do everything on my own, right? Like I can do it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs run into this because you are very self-sustainable. You are very resourceful, committed, dedicated, but then you start to believe that you are responsible for doing everything yourself and not kind of asking for that support and that outside kind of even perspectives, right? You just get so in your vacuum and kind of set in your ways. So that was a big one for me. And it's like the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything, right? Like I did everything in that capacity. Like I would, even when I moved from New York City to Los Angeles, I was like, I'm going to do it myself and like figure it out. And like, no, I don't need any help, and it just everything. And even just every scenario in my life, I would just be more comfortable doing it on my own than asking for support. But that got me into, just a lot of sticky situations, a lot of places where I did not feel like I was my best, truest self, especially even after college. I was really chronically unwell for about a decade or so. I had a lot of symptoms in college and kind of brought that through. And I did not reach out for support for a very long time. I just was like, no, this is not who I am. I am strong. I am like the person everybody can rely on and go to. And I think in a way, or I know in a way, that made me sicker instead of reaching out and being like, hey, like this is me right now. Like I am not doing well, right? I have like physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, mental health symptoms. And I and being vulnerable enough to show up and ask for that support. So I think rewiring that just started with the belief and the capacity to say that's okay to be there, meet myself there, just like you can meet other people there. And then kind of just like that exposure therapy, like taking a small step. Like for me, it was reaching out and finding a therapist and taking that little step and be like, all right, I'll try it on. Let's it's really not for me, but let's see what comes up there. Right. And of course that opened the door to everything else. So it was just those little tiny steps like that. And then once I did open that door, obviously got really heavily involved into this work and the mindset work. yeah, it's just kind of like shining that light for other people so that they can open that door, and then empowering them and encouraging them with the capacity to step through it and kind of guide them on that journey.
So during that, that was a beautiful answer. In that answer, you said that I was the type of person who didn't ask for help. I was the type of person. What is your identity today? Like, who is Nicole today?
Yeah. Today, I understand that especially if you're an entrepreneur trying to make any sort of shift or change in the world, you are extremely limiting yourself if you can't ask for help and support, right? It's like, it's like that, army of one versus army of 1,000, right? So today, my default still sometimes is to like be like, oh, I can do it. But then I catch myself, right? And then I think, okay, even just, it was funny, like last night, which is, I'll give this like a micro example. I'm hosting a meetup now, which is like I get people together. I call it Mind Talks. It's a lot of fun. We talk about just like stuff with mindset. And there was a problem with the venue. Like I actually had more people than I can fit in the capacity of the venue. And so I was like, I'll figure it out. Like I got to take time tonight. And then I was like, whoa, wait a second, reach out to your network, reach out to the people that are, attending the event in the community and ask them for their support. And I did that. And I woke up this morning with like 15 messages, people like, oh, I know so-and-so with the venue, or like, I can help out, or, and I was like, Nicole, it's just confirming that's the way to move. And so I always, now return to that. And just the more that you do it, obviously, the more that it becomes like, oh, this is the way to move through the world. This is my new lens and who I am and who I'm showing up as.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest issues for our listeners that we've seen is not everybody has people in their corner trying to lift them to the next level. And even the people who are trying to help don't always know how.
That's why Kevin and I created Next Level Group Coaching. It's a 3-month program on teams of 10 with all people committed to achieving their goals. Click the link in the show notes for more information.
And we only take 10 people at a time, so make sure you get in quick.
I have a question that I hope will be challenging for you to answer.
Oh, awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm pumped about that, by the way. So at one point, this whole self-dependent, self-reliant thing actually did serve you?
Mm-hmm.
Philosophical question.
Oh, boy.
If you didn't develop unreasonable self-reliance, would you be where you are today? Maybe that got you to a certain place. Because honestly, and I'll just pre-frame it, some people never develop that self-reliance.
Right.
And that independence first.
I was actually going to ask that.
Yeah.
Like, what if you're on the other side?
What if you're on the other side of that, of already starting with asking for help and being the victim and not being do anything on your own type of thing? I've seen the extremes of it, of like, so my girlfriend, for example, unreasonably self-reliant. But that actually is her bottleneck because she's got to delegate, right? And so do you, and so do we. But we can't start with there. We're not going to start entrepreneurial with all the delegation, all the asking for help.
Right.
We're going to build something on our own. So what is your take on that? Because Kevin and I are really trying to help people understand the different stages of the journey, and that honestly, that did serve you. Maybe you stayed too long, but it definitely served you, I think.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. It's like it served me to get to this point. Right. Like I grew up in a small town. I moved to New York City and had a very independent lifestyle there. And then I moved to Los Angeles by myself. And then I moved here, and then I started the business, right, and got that going. And a lot of I am, and even more so was at that point, very much like if something wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go in life, or didn't happen in a certain regard, I would be like, okay, you are responsible for this. Like, this is something that you can change and do. But you're right. It hit a limitation where I was like, wait a second, you're responsible, but only to a certain level, right? There's always two forces here. There's always two sides. And you can allow that other kind of force or side, or whatever you want to call it, that other level of support to move you to the next level. So it just, it hit a wall for me, I guess. But I still think, like, even back to what I was saying in the beginning, like, I still think that there's a reason why I had that programming, right? And like those beliefs. And I think we're all in our own journey, but I really am a believer now that those things do happen for a reason. And we are given those situations, and maybe the culture that we grew up in, or the parental conditioning, or whatever it is, it's not really a bad thing. It's just, that was our life, and that got us to the point that we are now, and we are exactly where we need to be to move to the next level. So I don't think it's a bad thing, and I don't really kind of regret it or look back on it and think, oh God, I wish I wasn't like living like that. It's just, that was who I was and who I needed to be for that time in my life to get me to where I am now.
Do you believe you could have shifted sooner had you been more aware or more proactive?
I think I probably could have. Yeah, definitely. I think I definitely could have, but back to that same kind of principle is I think that there was a reason why it didn't happen sooner, right? It's like you can always like connect the dots looking back. And when I look back, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's why I wasn't ready to remove that entirely and start reaching out, right? Like I still needed that self-sustainability. I just still needed that independence to get me to the next piece. So I think we do really shed things when we're ready. And that's something that I've also had to learn with clients and working with people is you can see their potential and you can see their capacity, but they have to be ready in their lives. And sometimes they can't see it. You can't see it. It's just a timing thing. You have to kind of trust and allow that that's going to work for them at the time that it's meant to work for them. And they're going to have that capacity and that capability when they're ready for it. So it's just kind of like letting that unfold a bit and trusting in the process.
Nicole, we talked about this in the preamble that we've done 600 and whatever episodes. And there's always a topic that we have every like month, 2-3 months. It's growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've done it like 6 or 7 times. Can you talk about, and I don't want to put my experience on everybody else. Can you talk about the understanding of perceived pain when it comes to raising your awareness and your consciousness? Because I know for Alan and I, like these growing pains are like, oh, I never should. If I knew what I know now, if I knew that back then, this never would have happened and this never would have happened. There's a positive, there's a negative, but I know a lot of people deal with pain when it comes to raising their awareness. What is your take on that and your perspective?
My perspective on that, I think goes back to kind of like Alan Watts. He has a good quote. I can't remember it exactly, but he believes that the higher in consciousness that you go and the more capacity you have for pleasure, you're obviously going to be more sensitive to pain. So I feel like just for me, from like anecdotal evidence, and then again, like evidence watching people move through this, is as you become more aware and more able to show up in your day and see the beauty in just the small things and like that cup of coffee and that walk or, that smile from a stranger, or that hug from your spouse or whatever it is, you're receiving that and able to embody that and feel that at a high level. Well, you've also kind of dialed up your receptors on pain. And I think it is, from my perspective, a beautiful thing. I know some people are like, oh, but like, we want to move away from pain. But it's two sides to the same coin. It's always going to be moving together and coming like that yin and that yang effect. So yeah, I guess it's just kind of holding capacity for people to see that and recognize that that's just a part of life and building their container for, again, more love and more pleasure, but also more pain, just expanding that awareness and that capacity so they can hold both, kind of like, I always like to say like rain when the sun is shining, right? It's like both are happening at once and it's still beautiful.
When you look back, when you reflect on your years of doing this and your life experience, is there one piece of awareness? Like what's one lesson, one experience, one failure, one success that has taught you more about yourself than anything else?
Ooh, like one particular, oh man. I guess I would almost go back to like something that I'm working on now that's teaching me a lot about myself. And I keep kind of repeating it. Like, just like I said, we're always growing, we're always learning. And for me, it's so funny because I can go back to even, I think I was like 11 or 12. And I have this kind of pattern or program that once I get going and I get traction in a certain area, especially in my career or even relationships, whatever it is, I stop myself and I slow myself down in a certain way. And I remember when I was like, probably like 12 or something, I was playing basketball and my dad would come to my middle school games and he would like show up kind of late, sometimes coming from work, and he would stand up in the bleachers in his like dark pinstripe suit because he's this Italian guy and he always wore like all black, right? And I remember seeing him come in and kind of getting a little nervous, like, oh, my dad's here, like I have to play well. And that game, I did not make one layup or one basket whatsoever. And I had so many breakaways, or I was always very fast, would get to the end of the court and then I stopped myself. And I remember at the car ride home, he was like, yeah, you played all right. And kind of was trying to encourage me because I was just unhappy and wouldn't talk to him and was just kind of like pouty. And he was like, from my perspective up there in the bleachers, you slowed yourself down. Like you're always way ahead of those other girls and beating them down the court, but you would stop and wait for them to catch up for you. And then you would fumble the ball and lose it. And so I think that's just been a big life lesson for me, because I am, like I've done a lot of things in my life, which again, back to the independence has been great, but I am constantly like shifting gears, like even with the coaching now, like it's, really moving along and great and feels very fulfilling, but I'm always kind of like, ooh, okay, so let me go a different direction and that will slow myself down. So I'm aware of that. And it's been a huge life lesson for me to just keep coming home to don't slow yourself down, like lean into this if it feels aligned and feels like the direction that's meant for you instead of pulling back. So
profound story.
Nicole, you are obviously aware of the quote of it is not our darkness but our light that most frightens us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've met many truly exceptional human beings who do that same thing of like I'm gonna wait for this person to pass me because I'm scared of my own greatness.
Right.
I without a question have that as well. Where do you believe that comes from? I believe it comes from not being so afraid not to fit in. For me, I think my fear of not fitting in, and losing love because of that, maybe short term. For you, why do you slow yourself down? Do you think?
I think you are very right in that regard. And for me, I like to look at it through the lens because I've analyzed this, or taken a peek at it from my own perspective. But I think it's about that connection. Like we're always seeking connection, right? And we often feel or believe that if we shine our light and move to that next level, that you're going to lose connection with the other people in your life. And even the stories and the patterns of the programs, you're going to kind of disconnect and lose that tether to those older pieces of yourself. And so we stop ourselves because we're like, well, maybe I'm not ready, or maybe I don't have the support, or maybe I'm not capable of this, or that self-doubt creeps in. And so we pull ourselves back. And I think, again, that's just a lesson that I've had to learn. Like even going back to the basketball kind of story when I was younger, is I got moved up pretty quickly from like, let's say like I was playing with the 12-year-olds, they moved me up to like the 15-year-olds. Well, I didn't play well because I was like, oh wow, they're so much bigger than me, they're so much better than me. And then I lost that connection to the girls that I was really close with on the team back when I was, playing with my level. And again, I think that just put that belief in my mind, like, ooh, if you move up and kind of shine, right? Yeah. Like do good. If I had made those baskets and leaned into my speed, then you're going to lose connection with those people that you really have that bond with. So I think that whether it's conscious or unconscious, we are constantly doing that in our lives. Because I will say too, working with entrepreneurs, most people come in thinking that they're afraid of failure. What they're really afraid of is success. And
right.
I'm sure you guys have seen that before too.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. That was me. 100% for sure.
Right.
Mine was failure. For sure.
Like, no, I'm afraid of failing.
I was not afraid of success at all.
I was not afraid of success at all. It was like, yeah, cool. That'd be cool if that happened.
Yeah, right.
Nicole, one of the things, so we have group coaching and we have 30 clients in group coaching and we have probably 50 or 60 clients between the two of us. One of the things that I'm always trying to balance is telling people like, I want you to do what you like. I want you to stay aligned. I want you to be fulfilled. I want you to go with the flow sometimes because I know that's important. But how do you balance going with the flow with also doing what's hard and necessary? And how do you give advice on that? Because we're in this space now where so many people are saying like, just do what you want and everything's going to work out. And there's other people who say like, work 23 and a half hours a day and then everything will work out. Like where do you fall on that?
So where I fall on that is it's like that balance between chaos and order. Like I know Jordan Peterson talks a lot about that. And so you have to create some sort of order to allow the chaos or some sort of stability. So again, for me, that would be going back to my routine, or even when I work with people, I've done this myself, where I create kind of like these containers throughout the day, like, okay, here you're going to be working on content. And then this is kind of your container for coaching. But within that, I have flexibility. So if I want to work on videos, if I want to write, if I want to do a podcast, whatever, this is my container for content. And then within coaching, you know, whatever, whoever I'm meeting with, or however that looks, that can be flexible. But it's just kind of creating like a little bit of stability and structure that allows you to then go out and have that flow and allow what's going to come in and like introduce that creativity in those pieces. But I think without that balance, yeah, we're usually too far on one end of the spectrum. Like I've also been extremely disciplined before, and that didn't work for me. And then I went kind of back to my natural inclination is just to be like, whatever, yeah, like let it come and like just be creative and let it flow. And then a lot of times you're not moving with intention. You're not making forward progress because you're not taking those actions. So
how often, and I've never asked this on the podcast, how often are you doing something where you're like, I genuinely rather be doing something else, but I know that this is so important for my now and my future?
Yeah. Ooh, like I don't know if I can give you a percentage. I know when I feel like that, it's usually like they call that in NLP, like you either have to like chunk up or chunk down. Like if I'm doing something that feels like little and tedious, then I will kind of like chunk up, get a wider perspective and be like, okay, where is this leading me? What is the reason I'm doing this? Oh, okay. Cause it's going to, serve people in this way, because it's going to expand the business in this way. And then I move with a lot more intention and a lot more motivation, versus just being like, just do it, just get through it. You know, you're not really seeing the greater picture. So for me, it's usually chunking up, but sometimes it's chunking down. Sometimes you're trying to do something and you're like way too ahead of yourself, and you see like where you're headed, but you're like, oh, I don't really know what to do, or I don't know what the next step is. And then you kind of have to chunk down and get a little more granular and do that smaller task. So yeah, I think, I don't know if I can give you a percentage, but it's definitely a lot less. I think that's always kind of like the life goal, right? Is especially if I work with new entrepreneurs, it's like, let's say, 60 or 70% of their day is spent doing their day job or things that they don't necessarily feel aligned with. But okay, so let's start with that 30% or that 40% where you are doing those things. Okay, now let's move it to 42%. Okay, now it's 45%, right? And it's just moving up that percentage where you're doing more and more of what fills you up and energizes you versus what you feel is depleting and kind of taking away your energy, and just constantly analyzing how you feel when you're in that activity.
Last question for me personally.
Okay.
There's a quote from a book called The Self-Made Billionaire Effect that I read way long ago. Way long ago. It was 2014. It wasn't that long ago.
Decades ago.
But they said that there's one common denominator in the way that all of the billionaires that they studied think. And I don't care about the billionaire thing. I care about the way they think. I think it's fascinating. And he said this, the author of that book said this: the way that billionaires think is they can take two seemingly opposing ideas and hold them in their consciousness simultaneously. Nicole, you do that regularly. Every video I watched of you, you're on this interview, you're very much like when Kevin asked, like, where are you on the 23 and a half hours a day or the do what you want that's fun and easy? I knew the answer. You're in the middle somewhere. Yeah. I already know it because you understand duality. You understand masculine and feminine, light and dark, up and down. You understand that the oneness in the duality, order and chaos. Okay, it's obvious to me that you do. Honestly, and I mean this with love, there's not that many people who have fully figured that out. And I know I haven't fully figured it out either. Okay, genuine. But there's yin and yang. Okay. This idea of balance, I think, needs to be changed to the idea of integration.
Yeah, beautiful.
How can you help people take two seemingly opposing ideas, for example, work really, really hard and grind your face off for your dreams, and do what you enjoy most in the world and serve to your heart's greatest extent? Okay, those two seemingly opposing ideas 1000% can be integrated, but they won't be unless you believe they can.
Right.
teach our listeners how to integrate seemingly opposing ideas?
I mean, I think the first step is to just kind of open to that possibility, because just like we talked about in the beginning, like most people are one side or the other, and that's their filter and way of seeing the world. And they are not open yet to the possibility that there could be another way. Like sometimes with people, I'm like, you don't even have to believe that there is another way or it is better. Like, is there the possibility that there could be another way? Like, let's get there. Right. And then, usually, hopefully they'd be like, okay, yeah, there is, it's possible. And then that just creates a space for that to come in, to see that, yeah, there could be another way and move in that direction. So, from there, it's just kind of encouraging them and empowering them with the tools to move that direction, and building that capacity, or even maybe that stability, just like I said, like with that grounding and that routine, to allow the new structures to come in and the new paradigms. Because I think I even did this myself too. If you're trying to work on a new model or a new way of seeing the world, if you just throw everything out the door, it's really going to just tax your nervous system and just rock your whole world and make you anxious and ungrounded in the whole thing. So creating that kind of container and that stability and that foundation for people, a lot of times a coach can do that, especially if you don't have the tools to do it yourself, allows you to then go out in the world and create that integration, create that balance for yourself. And then that human grows in their capacity to do that. Like they've seen, okay, it's possible. I just did it for this, even if it's a micro example. Now I'm going to apply this to the next level of my life and the next level of my life. And then it's just growing from there.
I'm going to cut up every time that you said next level, and that's going to be our most fire promo.
There it is. Just insert that multiple times. Do it again.
Nicole, tell people where they can find out more about you before we get out of here. And this was unreasonably good. So grateful that we made this happen, and so grateful that you're the person that you are, because this was genuinely amazing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, and love what you guys do, making change in the world, showing up and serving. So I think it's a beautiful thing. People can find me. I think the best place is just my website. So it's NicoleRaymondi.com. That's spelled, the last name is Raymondi. And then Instagram, same thing. It's my name with a dot in between. So Nicole.Raymondi. And just you can book a 15-minute call if you're interested in learning about changing your mindset and moving to the next level of yourself, expanding your awareness, and just that's usually where I start, is just to kind of see where it's a good fit and see how I can support people in that way. So that's my plug. That's me.
We will put all of that stuff in the show notes below for anybody. And if you're watching or listening, Nicole is the real deal. Again, so I'm in charge of prospecting for the show. And I reach out to people and I find profiles of people that I think will resonate with us and our listeners. And you are the real deal. Like, your content is you. There's no fluff. You're not, your perception is not higher than your character. And that's something we value so highly. So very grateful for you, Nicole. Thank you for taking the time with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course.
Nicole, thank you. Strong pick, Kev. Strong pick. Honestly, this was excellent.
Nicole's next level.
You very clearly contemplated many things in your life. You're a modern day philosopher, and I appreciate this so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you give Nicole a follow, check out her website, and we will talk to you on the next one.
Talk to you soon.